Hello again, everyone, and welcome back to Reddit Aliens. I'm John, and as always, thank you so much for being here. Merry Christmas Eve to those who celebrate. We got a good topic for you today. Let's do it. Has anyone ever tried to kill you? How did it go? Please remember to like, share, and subscribe. Happened when I was a kid. Two boys in the neighborhood wondered what would happen if they hung someone, and they chose to hang me. I am fuzzy on the details other than I was swinging when my dad saw what was happening and cut me down. I only remember being lifted off the ground and then in my dad's arms. My ex-husband was choking me, and he wasn't going to let go. I always say horror movies saved my life because in that moment I remembered my comments about people getting choked. Why do they struggle to the very end? Why not relax and pretend you're dead so the killer lets go and thinks it's over? So I did that. I relaxed and looked off. He freaked out and let go. I left 2 days later and we were divorced 2 months after that. He's a piece of shit, and I hope he's dead. Yes, best friend from childhood tried to kill me by shooting me 3 times point blank with a .45 through the neck, out my back, in my gut, and left hip. This was all because he relapsed after 4 years of sobriety due to his relationship ending, couldn't handle his emotions, and got aggressive toward me and my friends on my property who were just visiting for my birthday. Flatlined 2 times in operation, lots of blood transfusions, stomach surgery, and destroyed C6. Bullet bruised my left jugular vein. I got super lucky. Lots of surgery to come, and healing in all types of ways. He faces second-degree felony, but the lovely state of Colorado allows him to be on bond till final hearing. So, we have a man in our streets who tried to murder someone. Kid came to school with a gun in his backpack and a list of names. Kid was one of my friends. Not super close friend, but my name was first on the list. He was caught roaming the school looking for me. I'd been taken out of school a few days early for the holiday to visit my grandparents and hadn't told my friends. As far as I know, it was swept under the rug. Never saw the kid again. Only heard about it from my mother, and then later a school counselor I was required to talk to for a while. Never found any news story and any reports about it either. This was early 90s. I was stabbed by an idiot when I refused to give him my wallet. Still here. Yes, when I was about 19, my mom's ex-boyfriend broke down the front door while we were in the kitchen. I got in front of him, we started fighting, and him being 2.5 times my size got me against the wall and started trying to strangle me to death. So I put my thumbs in his eyes and pushed and scratched with everything I had. Now he's partially blind for life. I win, F-face. Oh, and then he got cancer. Yes, a serial killer by the name of Dale Hausner. I was out walking at night when he pulled up on me. I ran into an orange grove before he was able to shoot, and that night he killed a young woman walking to the apartment complex that I lived in. It still doesn't seem real to me, and it could have been me instead of her, and in a way regret that it wasn't me. She was also the last of his victims. I was the victim of a drive-by shooting. I got hit in my right hand and in my back. The bullet that hit my back clipped the left side of my spinal cord. I'm now a quadriplegic. Life isn't too bad though. I'm currently in college receiving STI and Medicare. I live in California, so weed is legal, and my fam doesn't do too bad of a job caring for me. Could be worse. When I was like 15, a friend loaded a gun and pointed it at me. I talked him down. 10 years later, he shoots his roommate in the head. I have 2. The first time in primary school, a friend and I were watching a movie when his older special needs brother decided that I had laughed at him, and he tried to choke me to death. Just as I was blacking out, I flailed a kick in his groin and he flinched enough that I got free, and his mom stepped in. The second time, a girlfriend tried to cook me to death in a car while I was asleep. She confessed to it later when she was drunk. She failed. I had a weird situation as a teenager. I was just getting into riding motorcycles, and my manager introduced me to a shop owner to get my bike fixed. End up becoming friends with this older dude. He wanted me to pretend to be his girlfriend's boyfriend. This is because he's a near 50-year-old dude sleeping with a teenager. I also figured out eventually he was on drugs. Anyway, I moved across the country, and he offered to make sure my motorcycle got shipped properly. Turns out he booby-trapped my brakes, and thankfully I was in a safe area and not in traffic when they went out. He unsuccessfully tried to murder a handful of people that knew he was a pedophile. Well, that really is a garbage piece of human excrement, but you made it out, and you're okay, so hope you're still riding bikes and are being safe. So, what a loser. I've been shot at. I wasn't the target, but I was downrange. It was scary, but I was fine 15 minutes later. They were driving away fast. I didn't expect them to return. I also got stabbed. I was able to block it with my elbow and grab his arm and control it. He was like a 20-year-old addict. I'm a 36-year-old construction worker. He panicked and ran off. I had to spend 4 days in the hospital getting IV medicine to combat the infection. I'm fine now. This happened 3 months ago. It still hurts, but I'm fine. My older sister was a drug addict and generally nuts in the worst way. When I was maybe 8 or 9, I was in the car with her and she started to have a freak out. She became suicidal, saying she would just kill us both, and swerved into oncoming traffic. The other cars managed to avoid us until she hit the median, and then the cops came out. She managed to lie her way out of any medical intervention, said she had lost control of the car, and we went on our merry way with a tow truck. Later, she said if I ever told anyone, she'd kill me for real. I never did tell anyone until I was an adult in therapy. 1978 or so, swimming in shallow area of a very large football field-sized community pool. I was about 6 years old at the time. My sister's friend asked me if I wanted to learn how to go underwater. I said yes. She told me to take a deep breath and then shoved me under the water and sat on me, wrapping her legs around me. I could not get away. Somehow, my mother, who was sitting on the surrounding grass half, paying attention, figured out what was happening. She charged over and threw the girl off me. Not sure what would have happened had she not come for me. Thanks, Mom. You, Meredith. Got jumped by 2 drunk dudes when I was walking. I fought like a badger and they took off, but when it was all said and done, I was worse for the wear. 6 stab wounds, 4 broken ribs, 2 missing molars, 3 broken knuckles, a cracked orbital socket, and a broken nose. Healed up as well as I could, but now I have absolutely zero tolerance policy for anyone wanting to F around. Yes, active duty here. One deployment out to sea, a disgruntled sailor I worked with was being sent to the mast because I reported them for a tagout violation. He was going to lose everything. It was his 4th time going up. One night, while down and steering, I hear a thump from above. He took 4 CO2 bottles, a homemade Molotov, and some gunpowder he snuck on board and essentially tried to throw a bomb into the space I was doing maintenance in, aft steering. I was hurt pretty bad. Luckily, someone was doing laundry around the same P-way and saw him, able to identify him based on his shoes he wore. They do a birthing check, discovered he tried covering them in Sharpie and paint. He was arrested and court-martialed at the next port after being contained. My ex-stepfather tried to choke me to death when I was like 12. I was terrified and also at peace at the same time. The only reason he stopped is my baby brother started crying and he realized if I was dead, he'd have to be the one that took care of his son. Either that or he realized he wouldn't be able to see his son if he was in jail for murder, but joke's on him. He's in jail now and his son doesn't talk to him. I'd say it went in my favor considering I'm still alive. I'll say though, it definitely caused a lot of trauma. My mom, when I was a teenager, bullied me into taking a bunch of pills that were supposedly prescription painkillers, but I'm not sure. Within about 10 minutes, my vision started spinning and my body was extremely hot, then feeling like I was going to vomit. It was night in the middle of winter, and I ended up stripping down to shorts and a thin tank top and sitting outside trying to cool off while she ignored me. My dad got home from work, asked me what was wrong, and all I said was, "Mom gave me some pills," which had him immediately freak out. He was running around, making me drink a lot of water, yelling at her. At the time, I just thought she was an idiot, but I realized later from my dad's reaction, she must have talked about it to him before because he knew exactly what had happened without me even telling him how many or what she'd given me. My ex-husband did meth and was abusive. The day I last saw him was the day I gave him an ultimatum, either quit meth or leave. He didn't want either, so he got a machete and told me he was going to kill me. What he didn't know is that I called the police and they came in with him next to me with the machete. It wasn't until later I understood how that could be my last day on Earth, because when DV victims try to leave, that's when they usually end up dead. That was in 2017. Dude picked me up by the neck and said he was going to throw me off the 6th floor balcony we were standing on. His friends convinced him that going to jail for murdering your drug dealer would be a shitty way to spend spring break. So, fine. Went fine. Twice, actually. When I was 2, my 12-year-old cousin grabbed my hand at a family picnic, took me up to the above-ground 4-foot pool, and pushed me in while laughing hysterically. Thank goodness someone saw it happen and jumped in and got me out in time. That kid was evil, and it's no surprise that he's in prison for shooting and attempting to murder his girlfriend. The other time was my 6'4" football player ex. He was an amazing boyfriend before this. Came out of nowhere. While I was at work and he was at my house, he found my old high school diary and read it. I guess my high school dating details infuriated him. When I walked in from work, he took my car keys and phone and wouldn't give them back. Then he slammed me up against the wall and grabbed my throat with both hands and started to choke me. He had me completely lifted off the ground against the wall and I couldn't breathe. I thought I was going to die. He was on a bowling league and I found a bowling pin when I moved into my house and gave it to him. I'm so glad I did, because it was on the stand right next to us. I managed to grab it before I lost consciousness and began to pummel him with it. He ended up in a fetal position, screaming and crying like a baby. The bruise that was left on my neck was insane. Anyways, he ended up in the hospital and then went straight to jail. In 8th grade, we were on a school trip, and this one, usual bully, who had failed a couple of classes and hence was bigger, was being annoying, so we complained to the teacher. He got to know that I did it. The next day, when we were in a very shallow river, he pushed my head into the water. I obviously couldn't breathe, but somehow managed to get my face out, and he did it again, and then continued doing it like 10 times. After that, he let me go off with a warning that this time I'm letting you live, but won't spare you the next time. I was scared because his uncle was also a local gangster. Then in grade 10, his mom committed suicide. After a couple more years in uni, he got beaten up so bad by a group that his arm was broken. I met a different friend who met him, and I got to know he has changed. Like he apologized to this common friend for stealing his food. He's now married and now has a young daughter. Very long story, but a guy attempted to break into my truck. I caught him, and he pulled a knife on me and stabbed me once in the face and once in the hand. I was able to wrestle the knife off of him, hit him enough times to subdue him, and hold him down until police were called. I've also regretted not killing him that night, because he went on to do some shitty stuff and victimize some other people. I felt like I could have stopped that and been well within my rights. He passed a few years ago from an OD. Back in grade school, we would hang out at the public swimming pool. Along comes fat bully who would grab a kid and dunk them under the water. After he had dunked me several times in a row, I decided the next time I'll take care of him, and he did. As I was under the surface, I grabbed his leg and bit down as hard as I could. I could taste the blood. He tried to pull me off, but I hung on and kept my teeth into his leg. Finally, I ran out of breath and released my bite. As I came to the surface, he was hauling ass away as fast as he could. The other kids were all gawking. That fat kid never dunked another victim that summer. After several hours of drinking at a club watching some USA 94 World Cup matches, a dickhead in a car park started beating his girlfriend in the car. I helped pull her out, and he tried to drive away. Car park was jammed. I got a brick through his window, and he tried but failed to run me over. He eventually got penned, and I got him out of the car. We kicked 7 shades of shite out of him. I had an extremely abusive ex a few years back. It got so bad that in order to control me, he would put knives to my throat. One day, I'd had enough. He pinned me against the wall and held my knife to my throat, and I grabbed his hand to press it harder, looked him dead in the eyes and said, "Do it." He then stood back, looked shocked, and then went into a fake meltdown about how I scared him, and he couldn't do it anymore. I knew he was mentally ill, and him treating me that way wasn't his fault. The next day he broke up with me and I got my freedom. Almost 6 years later, and that was still the best decision I ever made. I used to have a stalker abuser, and a lot of crazy things happened, but the last thing that ever happened was her trying to kill me. She was at my apartment and trying to break down the door, screaming she was going to kill me. So she punched through my window, but in the best karmic way possible, she cut super deep into her arm on the pullback and just about severed her whole arm off. There was an older woman who lived there who was a nurse back in the day and created a tourniquet until the EMS and police arrived. I had to personally clean all the blood and risked getting kicked out. My landlord was a terrible person. He said that I shouldn't have bad people around and drama around, even when I showed him an extensive collection of things this person had done to me and all the police reports. Didn't matter. Stalker wasn't in his vocabulary, I suppose. Was on thin ice for the small amount of time I stayed there, waiting for the process of getting a new place. I was not going to stay long and have a possible retaliation from her. This was a few years ago. Honestly, it's stuck really hard with me, but I finally am able to have access to counselor and psychologist and am slowly, truly healing from it all. I rescued my now senior dog from a shelter 12 years ago. He's now 14. They tried to deter me from adopting him because he was far too aggressive to make a good pet, ever again due to the heavy abuse he endured. I couldn't accept that when he put his head between his paws and looked up at me with his beautiful golden eyes. Anyway, I was married to an abusive man at the time who really liked to slap, kick, punch, and generally hit me whenever I offended him. His greatest mistake was doing that in front of Charlie for the first and last time. This guy had curly, thick hair that was almost to his shoulders, and he was fairly tall. Charlie's a stocky German Shepherd Husky mix that looks like a namesake from All Dogs Go to Heaven, right to the ears that don't stand up straight. So this guy's choking me. First time he's ever done this, and I can't cry out. No one is even around to help, and I'm fully convinced he's going to kill me. The only training I've done with Charlie so far is to respond to snaps of my fingers to pay attention. So I snapped my fingers weakly. Charlie understood. He jumped up the guy's back, grabbed his hair at his mouth, and dropped all his weight to pull the guy backwards. He saved my life. My precious boy is with me through thick and thin. Got in a fight at a party in high school at 16. Shouldn't have been there, but was young and dumb. 24-year-old crazy guy was there and got the idea in his head that I stole some of his money. He was waving around like $5,000 in bills and apparently lost some. He accused me of taking, and I mouthed off. Next thing I know, I'm being woken up on the floor. He had knocked me out, but continued beating me, fracturing my orbital. Thankfully, others there pulled him off. Buddy took me home, then parents to ER, explaining that wasn't fun. I also should have died a couple times in Iraq. I wasn't combat arms, but transported tanks and their crews, 88mm, and we rolled through a few ambushes on the road that I have no idea how I survived. Drove through a wall of tracers, and we somehow didn't take a hit, not to mention the numerous IEDs and nightly mortars and rockets at various camps and FOBs across the country. I got lucky, but unfortunately others did not.